Hello, everybody. It's Sean Darcy from the Coach for Coaches, and I'm really excited to be doing a session about designing sessions for enjoyment for teenagers. I really like the way they've used the word enjoyment, not fun, because as I'll explain later on, I've had some issues with trying to get coaches to put fun in their sessions, So if we look at slide one, this is going to be the layout of my presentation, where first of all, we're going to try and talk about, why putting enjoyment in sessions is a good idea. Secondly, we're going to try and understand what teenagers enjoy. Now, I know that's a big topic. We're just going to go through a few basic elements of what teenagers will enjoy. And the last thing is I'm going to give you some practical examples of how you can, without reinventing the wheel, we're using quite traditional exercises, how you can tweak them to make them more enjoyable for teenagers. So that's some practical advice. So like I said before, I've had some issues with using the word fun rather than enjoyment. I can remember when I was working as a technical director, it was a few years ago now, probably about 10 years ago now, where we were having a coaches meeting. And I was saying to the coaches that we need to really try and interject some fun into the sessions. They've got to be something that you'd like to do if you were that age. It's something that they're going to have a good time when they come. I always remember one of the coaches said, should we all sit in a circle and sing Kumbaya for 10 minutes every session? And I kind of didn't have an answer to him because I was kind of thrown by that. So I like the way they use the word enjoyment, not fun, because fun has like a connotation, like it's really childlike, it's really a kiddie thing to do. So if we look at the definitions here in slide 2, we can see that like fun is just pleasure. It is kind of frivolous in that definition, whereas enjoyment is the process of enjoying doing something. And that's the difference, where you can enjoy working really hard. You can enjoy, if you look at marathon runners, they enjoy pushing themselves to their physical limits, how far, kind of exhausting themselves and really putting in an enormous amount of effort. So enjoyment is something that you can enjoy working super hard at a training session. And I think that's the difference, where fun tends to be make everyone think you're just messing about. It's not, there's no learning happening. But enjoyment, there can be a lot of learning happening, and people can be working really hard and then they're just enjoying themselves. So I like the way they've used the word enjoyment, not fun. The next thing I want to say is why it's important is we don't do things we don't want to do. We literally don't do them. Now, I've lived in this house for about 15, 16 years or something now. And I've only cleaned the gutters for the first time this winter because I don't enjoy doing things like that. I don't enjoy balancing on top of a ladder and scraping out the gutters. So I just haven't done it. And only because I had to, because the water was flowing over the sides of the gutters when it rained, did I ever even do it. Because we just don't do things we don't want to do. And it's the same with teenagers. We can't expect them to do something they don't enjoy. I was doing a training session not this pre-season, last pre-season, and when you sometimes have different clubs using the same grass until you get your the pitch for your team, and he was in a different club, and I remember him constantly saying to the players, you have to do this if you want to get better, because all the players were really not enjoying it at all. It was I think he had an octagon, and they just passed and followed the pass. And this must have happened for 25 minutes, and the body language of the players was really down. They clearly weren't having a good time, and they clearly weren't putting any effort in because it just wasn't enjoyable. Now, we just don't do things we don't want to do. Look at a more practical example of my watch here. If somebody said, you got to get 10,000 steps, go for a run. By the end of the road, I wouldn't be having a good time. But if someone said you've got to get 10,000 steps, you want to play a game of football, I wouldn't have a problem. I absolutely wouldn't have a problem. So we don't do things we don't enjoy. So it's kind of vital we put enjoyment into our sessions if we want our players to turn up or to continue to turn up for year after year. I mean, there's such a dropout rate from teenage organised football. It actually has a name, and that's like the teenage tumble, where the numbers drop off massively where you're in the teenage years, when children get old enough to tell their parents they don't want to do it anymore. And there's been survey after survey done trying to explain why this happens. And it's very simplistic to say they don't enjoy it anymore. But the survey results kind of say that the experience that we give them of our sport turns them off. They don't enjoy it. The coach is too intense, or the coach is not informed enough. The sessions are boring, or the sessions are all about fitness, or the games are all about winning. They're the reasons that people stop, or teenagers stop coming, because they stop enjoying it. And it's because of things that we can change, but we kind of do it because we think, well, this is the way it's always been, and this is the way it has to be done, which isn't really the case. And the last reason why we have to, kind of focus on, making it enjoyable is a really positive reason. It improves the session. If you're having a good time doing something, you work harder, you put more effort in, you'll learn more. And that's definitely the case with teenagers in sport. If they are having a good time, they won't notice how long it lasts. I mean, if you got that real great feeling when one of the players says, "What, is it over?" And you go, "Yeah, we've got to get off, somebody else is coming on." Because they haven't realized that 75 minutes or 90 minutes has passed, because they're just buzzing. They're having a good time. So like the reasons why we really need to encourage enjoyment is that people just won't come if they don't enjoy it. And it improves your session. It makes your session work better. You can get all the learning outcomes you want, and you can get them better if they're enjoying themselves, rather than you're trying to push against the players to get them to learn. All right. And the next thing we're going to move on to now is the understanding. Are you understanding the teenagers? Now, there's lots of people who are a lot more qualified than me and a lot more money than me trying to understand what teenagers want. But I'm just going to give you a few basic things that teenagers really require from a training session. They want to make their own decisions. They want to have some control. Teenagers' lives are getting told what to do all the time. So they want to have some control, and they want to feel like an adult. They don't want to feel like a child at training. They want to be treated like an adult as much as possible. And we can do that by giving them responsibility for their own decisions when they're in that training sphere. And we can give them as much responsibility as we can. Now, we're going to talk about how we can do that with some exercises later on. But even something as simple as where you say, like, you give them a demonstration of what type of warm-up you want. And then you allow the players to do their own warm-up. Or you give the responsibility to one player, and you say, you can take charge of that warm-up and you can do the warm-up. So the players then have control over warming their bodies up to play. Now, you might get some not going exactly the way you want at the start. But if you tell the players what standards you expect from the warm-up and then leave them to it, they will gradually start doing the warm-up every bit as well as you could. So it's just those things where players want to feel responsibility, and they want to feel confident that they're making good decisions. And we can really encourage that in the way that we do our sessions. So one thing is that the players want to make their own decisions. The next thing is that players really want to feel part of a group. They want to feel part of a collective. They want to have an identity in their team. So they need to work together with the other people in their team. Now, it's a time of life when teenagers are like drifting away from their parents. I mean, I always laugh that my dad actually played for his country, and I used to ignore my dad when he told me advice when I was like 14, 15, 16. And sometimes I hear myself saying exactly the same things that he told me that I kind of ignored. And it's quite funny because I can always hear it in an Irish accent of him telling me things. And I can remember I ignored them. I mean, if you've got any knowledge of coaching your own kids, it is quite strange where sometimes you can be saying the same thing to your child for months on end, and they don't listen, and then somebody else says it, and they think it's wonderful, and you're like, hold on, I've been telling you that for ages, and you've not been listening to me. So it's that thing where the players want to be a collective, they want to have an identity, and so you need to encourage things where players work together and they work things out together, and that way you'll get what the players want out of the session. And the last thing is to understand teenagers. I think everybody thinks they understand what happens when a teenager goes through puberty and they're saying, yeah, you know, everybody gets big really quick and they get interested in the opposite sex. But it's not just that, like, it's very destabilizing, puberty, or what teenagers are going through, because they don't, it's very hard to be comfortable in your life when you're not entirely sure where you fit in your world. I mean, one minute you might be, you know, I can tell you, I saw an example of this only a couple of months ago at the start of the season, where I saw one of the players that I coach at school, and his mum was carrying his bag for him back to the car. And this is a big strapping 14-year-old lad carrying his bag for him back to the car. And you're thinking, okay, well, he can carry his own bag if he wants. Then when they got to the car, she was actually had some furniture in the back of the car. And then she told him to shift the furniture so that she could get his bag in. And you're thinking, one minute he's not strong enough to carry his own bag. Next minute he's strong enough to move a new kitchen table or something out the back of the station wagon. And it's very difficult for players to understand where they are when the world around them rapidly changes all the time. One minute they can be the smallest in the group. Next minute they can be the tallest. So if you can understand that part of their life, that things are rapidly changing all the time, so you can, as the coach, you can be like a stable part of their life that's always the same. They know, you know about them, you understand them. So part of that is communicating with your players. And we often hear people saying, like, you need to talk to your players. But I think talking's only part of it. It's listening. That's the big thing. If you as a coach of your player, you know, remember that they've got a little sister or two big brothers or wherever, and that's something that makes them feel part of the group and gives them an identity and gives them that stability. All right, so that's enough talking from me. And so what we're going to do now is let's get into some practical examples of how we can bring those things out to make sessions more enjoyable. So let's have a look at slide 3. Now, if you can see from slide 3 there, that's a very traditional passing exercise where we've just got the players in a square, pass the ball, follow the ball, and the ball just goes around the square or rectangle or wherever it is, and you just pass and follow, pass and follow. Now, most teenagers, most players, in fact, will not particularly enjoy that session. So that's very similar to that one that I spoke about in pre-season before, where they just passed and followed the ball around an 8-sided shape. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you how we can tweak that so that it allows all the things we spoke about before, which is making their own decisions and working as a collective. So if we look at slide 4, so now what we're going to do, like, this is a kind of a normal progression for this exercise where you say, okay, when the receiver gets the ball, you can bounce the ball back to the passer and play a little 1-2, and you go on to the next count. But what I'm saying to you is, don't make it a progression, make it an option. So now the player who's receiving the ball can either open their body out and play first time, or they can bounce the ball back. So give them 2 options. So you're giving that receiver now the decision-making capacity to say, right, are you going to choose what you're going to do? Are you going to bounce, or are you going to take it to open out and play the other way? And then maybe what you can do, if we look at slide 5, what you can do now is maybe put a player in the middle, and you can give options to the passer as well. And you can say to the passer, you can play to the other corner, or you can play to the person in the middle. And now you give them 2 options to the passer and 2 options to the receiver. So they're going to choose what they're going to do. So they have, again, like we said, that responsibility over what they're working on. And then they get the decisions. So but now you can say to the person in the middle, well, you can either play back to the person who gave it to you, or you can play to the next corner. So everybody has options on what they're going to do. But the key to this is that you can still work on everything that you want to work on in that passing exercise. So you can still work on ball speed, you can still work on accuracy, you can still work on first touch, how you receive the ball and what you're going to do. And yet now you're giving the players decisions. And now what we've given options to the passer and options to the receiver. And now what we're going to do, if we have a look at slide 6, All right, now what we're saying is you can interchange positions with anybody as long as the ball keeps moving around that square. We don't mind. So you can interchange with the person in the middle. You can even run down and you can take over the person in the corner. They don't move, you move. So now we're giving options to the passer, options to the receiver, and positioning options to all the players so that they can move anywhere they want. And again, you're still getting all the things you want out of that exercise, but the players now have more responsibility and control over it. Instead of it being progression 1, you do this now, progression 2, you do this now, progression 3, you do this now. What you're doing is layering on options to allow them to choose from. The next thing you could do, like I haven't got any slides for it now, is you could maybe put a defender in the middle, and then they've got to try and play around that defender as they're going round. Or what you could do is you could put 2 players in the middle and say you can combine off each other. As long as that ball keeps going around that rectangle, who cares? It just make the players now have some decision-making capabilities. They can be a bit creative with the way they pass the ball, but you're still getting all the outcomes that you want from a very traditional passing exercise. You've just tweaked it to meet the needs of the players you've got to make it more enjoyable. And that's kind of the crux of all the information I'm going to give you today. I'm not going to try and get you to coach in a completely new fashion. I'm just saying, here's some traditional exercises, and if we tweak them, we can get more out of our sessions for our players. They can feel more ownership, more confidence, and they can feel more in control. So I'll give you one more passing exercise and I'll show you how we can tweak it. And it's in slide 7 here. So this is a little bit similar to that last exercise, but now it's a diamond shape. So we've got a player at the bottom of the diamond and a player at the top of the diamond. And this time you don't pass and interchange with the player. They pass into the middle. The 2 players combine in the middle to meet the run, timing their run coming around the outside to receive that ball. So you see on the left-hand side there, it's like, I call it a Harry Potter scar. It goes up, goes across, and goes back again to meet the run, and they play to the top of the diamond. So the only 2 players that move are the players at the top and bottoms of the diamond. They're the only 2 players that move at any time. And the ball just goes up again. So if you look then on the left-hand side, right-hand side of that slide, you say, right, straight away you give options to the passer. Do you want to play right, or do you want to play left? And then that affects the 2 players and then what type of passing options that they've got in the middle, whether you go left or right, and the ball goes from the bottom of the diamond to the top of the diamond. So again, you give them options to the passer. But now, instead of giving just 2 options, you can give 3 options to the passer. And you can say, you can go, so if we look at slide 8, you can say, you can go right to the top of the diamond, and they combine and you get the ball to play it back. Or you can go to the sides of the diamond. So you're giving that responsibility and control to that player. Do you want to practice a punchy little pass into the middle, or do you want to practice a long pass into the fella at the top of the diamond? So we're starting to get players really having to say, well, I think I need to work on that a bit more. So I'm going to do that a bit more. And we can get the players taking the responsibility for their own actions. And we're giving them 3 options as a passer. And obviously the receiver's got different options as well, because they can receive to play that way, receive to play that way. And then the next thing, if you look on the right-hand side of that, we'll give them different positioning options and say, well, you don't have to go right, you have to go left. So the players in the middle and the players at the top have to recognize, well, which direction did he or she go? And then we've basically got to adjust to that. So if he's run to the left or she's run to the left of me, I've got to play a different pass than if he or she has run to the right. So now we're giving them different positioning options. And if we look at slide 9, again, like the same kind of difference we added at the end last time, we can say we can interchange positions. So instead of running around to meet the pass, you can interchange with the player in the middle. And you can say, like you did before, we're not bothered how the ball gets there, but we just want to go from the top of the diamond to the bottom, back, and we keep going all the time and we keep it flowing. And again, like the session we had before, we can put a player in the middle and you say that player can either be included in the passing combination. You say, well, you can play off that player anytime you want. Well, that player can be a defender who's trying to get in the way. and you're going to try and play that ball around them. So again, you get lots more decision making on what you need to do, and you get the players controlling their exercise and controlling what they're practicing on. Now, I've used both exercises multiple times in the past, but I've used the Harry Potter style one a lot more because players really buzz off that one. And because I kind of tend to use it as a warm-up or a feeder into a different exercise where I'm just really focused on warming up their passing, I've had to stop that at times because people are getting tired because they're sprinting around all over the place. They're interchanging positions. They're doing big long runs from the top to the bottom of the diamond, and you can really get the players really focusing on that. So if you take that, the principles of what I'm talking about there, any passing exercise you want, you can kind of do that too, can't you? Where you can say, like, instead of adding progressions, you just add options. And that will get what we wanted before, where it's they make their own decisions and they work together. So they work together to get it round the square, or they work together to get it up through the diamond. All right, and the next one is a real traditional one. It's a look at slide 10. So this is just a traditional rondo. Now, we've all kind of done these rondos or possession exercises where you've just had, I'm using 4 against 2 here, but you could use 5 against 2, you could use 4 against 1, it doesn't make any difference. But what we're going to do, again, we're going to tweak that traditional exercise to make it more about what the players will enjoy. So this could be any size shape, that's up to you. But you literally you don't get points for keeping the ball for 5 passes. What you get points for is, can you move the whole rondo into another area? So clearly you're going to have to give some sort of a trigger for when you move. So you could say, like, if we complete 5 passes in this area, we get a point, and then we get a point for completing 5 passes in that area. And you've got to move between the 2 to get points. Now, what will happen, I guarantee, the first time you do it, is once they get to 5 passes, they'll try and transfer straight away. And what will happen is they'll probably kick it to someone, one of the defenders will chase in, and they'll lose it on the first go. Because if they don't work as a collective to choose the right moment to play into that area where that player's got support and that player's overloading at least 1 defender, maybe 2 defenders, they'll lose possession. So it's a real exercise of more the collective side of things, because a rondo has lots of decision making in any way, but now they must work as a collective to get into that next area. And so again, we're meeting the needs of the players, that they are forming an identity with their teammates about how they get into that next area with the ball. And so again, it's just a little tweak. You're not changing a rondo and how you coach a rondo. You're just kind of tweaking it just that little bit to make it more in tune with the needs of what the players want. And again, we could, you could have a 5th player in the other area that they play to. That'll make it a little bit easier for them. And then we just have that transfer from one side to the other. And how you get, just to take that a little step further, if we look at slide 11. So what this is, instead of like having isolated rondos, so if you've got, a squad here, I think it would be of 12. If you've got, you don't, instead of having 1 4v2 there and 1 4v2 there, you put them in the same area. So this could be a 40 by 20 pitch with 40 by 20 pitch with, or 40 by 30 pitch with 20 by 15 quarters in that pitch. And what you do is you have 2 teams, the white team and the yellow team. So it's 4v2, 4 whites, 2 yellows there, 4 yellows, 2 whites there. And you could say it's the first team to get through all 4, or who gets through the most in, say, a 5-minute period. Now, the first thing you think of there, well, to defend for 5 minutes in a 4v2 rondo is really tiring. But what you're going to do now is they're working as a team. So at any one time, if that defender's getting tired, he can call over to somebody on the other side and they can work together to when they swap over. Because it's all about the yellow team getting around those 4 squares and the white team getting around those 4 squares. So they're going to work as a collective. The same sort of thing, you say, once you complete 5 passes, can you get into another area? Now, what will happen with that slide 11, because I've done this one quite a lot because players tend to really enjoy it, is they'll just go from right to left, right to left, right to left, right to left. And that's why I like getting around all 4, because then when players invade somebody else's territory, it really gets quite tactical and it gets a lot more enjoyable as well. So again, what I'm trying to say to you there is try and meet the needs of the players by including those decisions, including that working together as a group. And that's quite a traditional exercise. A rondo, almost every team does rondos, but you're just making it more about the player, about what the player wants. Now, I'm going to be even more traditional now if we have a look at slide 12. Now, slide 12 is a small-sided game. So, but again, I just want you to tweak how you coach it. So instead of like putting on a traditional small-sided game would be something like you play two-touch. So you're eliminating lots of decisions for the players and simply saying you must play quickly, because if you take more than two touches, you lose possession of the ball. And what we're going to do now is, instead of having that type of traditional small-sided game where you force the players to play the way you want, what you're going to do now is you're going to set the players a problem and allow them to collectively work out that problem. So in this exercise, that shaded area is quite important. And you can make that shaded area wherever size you want, that's no problem. But what you're going to suggest to the players is, here's the problem. A goal is worth one plus however many players are in that shaded area when the ball goes in. And that is a good principle to work on for your players. The more players you get in goal scoring positions every time you attack, the more goals your team will score. But what they're going to say there is, like, it's a balance. The problem you're setting them is, how do you get those players in that area without leaving yourself open the counter attack? Because if you're playing 6 aside and 5 players get in there, there's just a big open space between those players and the goalie. So you're giving them a problem. How do you commit players forward without leaving yourself open? Which is something that you want really helpful in your games at the weekend. You know, how do we attack without leaving ourselves open to the counter attack? So you set the players a problem. You don't just tell them, this is what I want, like two-touch, I want you to play quick. You set them a problem and you allow them to discuss it. So you explain the rules of the game. A goal is worth 1 plus however many players you've got in that shaded area. And then you say, go away and discuss. You work out your formation. How are you going to get players in that area to make your goals worth more and win the game? We're going to play for 5 minutes. And then you play for 5 minutes. And if you haven't got a coaching point that you want to bring out, that's fair enough. But you'd allow the players to discuss for a minute what you're going to do. Now, what normally happens is 3-4 players will get into that shaded area to try and get the highest number goal they possibly can, while leaving themselves vulnerable at the back. So if lots of goals are happening in transition, loads of counterattacks, then what you could possibly add another condition where you could say, okay, if you score within 5 seconds of regaining possession of the ball, it's worth 2 plus however many players are in the shaded area. And you can really tweak the game to say you need to be worried about that counterattack and not just about getting those players in there. And teenagers love these problem-setting small-sided games because it meets their needs. They make their own decisions, they come up with their own formations, they come up with their own positions, and they come up with their own tactics. So they can't be wrong. So they can be very confident in what they're going to do because it's theirs. And it has lots of great side effects, like where I hear all the time coaches today saying kids don't talk enough. They don't talk to each other. They never communicate. And he's saying, well, when I was a lad, coaches said that we didn't talk enough when we were younger as well. It's a perennial issue that older coaches talk about, how the players don't talk enough. But in these type of problem-setting games, it's their tactics. They own it. That's why they talk about it, because they will tell their players what to do because it's them. It's their tactic. And it's not you as the coach shouting on what you want. It's theirs. They have ownership and they're confident enough to communicate how they want to play to each other. So again, like with the passing exercises and the rondos, small-sided games are a very traditional part of a training session. But all we're asking you to do is like tweak the way you deliver a small-sided game. Play in small blocks, give the players a chance to a hot review, to discuss what they're going to do for a minute, to try and come up with what tweaks need to be done, who needs to maybe draw back a little bit, who needs to go forward maybe a little bit more. And the players then will have ownership, will have a sense of it working collectively, and they'll be making their own decisions. So it's just, you're looking at things a little bit differently, not necessarily changing everything you do. So now if we look at slide 13, I'll give you another example. So I've deliberately taken slide 13 because that's the one where we did before with that rondo, didn't we? Where we had the pitch divided into 4. Because dividing the pitch into 4 gives you lots and lots of options for how you can progress a small-sided game. So if we give this a very simple thing in your game with teenagers, they're playing 11-a-side football, so the pitch is quite big, and especially if you're in the younger teenage years, the 13, 14s, the pitch can be enormous for them. So it's a good understanding for the players to start directing the opposition to one side of the pitch and trying to lock them in onto one side of the pitch. So that's something that you kind of want your teams to do. Try and restrict the space that the other team can play in, so you've got more chance of winning the ball back. So with this one, what you do is you set them the problem. You get the yellow team on one side and the white team on one side, and you'd say to the white team, if you win the ball in this quarter of the pitch, so the other team knows it because it's very easy to see. If you win the ball in this quarter of the pitch, you get a bonus goal for it straight away. And then you say to the other team, if you win in another quarter of the pitch, you get a bonus goal for that straight away. So then the players start dictating where the opposition is going to play, because they want to try and force them into the quarter of the pitch where they want to win the ball. And then if they win the ball, they get a bonus goal for it. And obviously, if they go on and score, they get 2. So you're just setting them a problem, and it's very crucial that you allow them those time to discuss. So you say, play for 5 minutes. Maybe keep score for 4 5-minute games in a row, so the score continues across all those 5-minute blocks. But you give them time to discuss it and give them time to, because there's no way they're going to work out the correct tactic at the start. So you allow them to work collectively together to tweak their tactics so they can get the best possible result out of their game. And it's just, again, you're just meeting the needs of the player. You're going to give them their autonomy. They make their own decisions. They can feel responsible and in control. You're going to get them to work as a collective. And you have all these extra bonuses of like better communication, better understanding of how you want to do things, because we all understand things better if we create it rather than somebody else tries to tell us how to do it. So if we understand our own tactics, then it's a lot easier for us to play. So if I recap the whole presentation so far, what I'd say is, like, making a session enjoyable is important for lots of reasons, but mainly because people just won't want to come to your sessions if they don't enjoy them. As soon as they get a chance to do something more enjoyable, they'll go and do it, because that's what people do. If you make your session enjoyable, you'll get lots of extra benefits. Behavior won't be an issue for you, because people tend to not want to disrupt something when they're having a good time. They'll put more effort in, they'll learn more, and you can still get every outcome that you want from a session that is not enjoyable. You can get the same outcomes if you just try and make it enjoyable. The understanding of the teenagers, like, obviously there's lots more than I've spoken about today, but it's at a very basic level. You want to allow the players to have some control and responsibility for their own development, and they will respond really well to that. Players working as a collective because they want to feel that they have an identity is a really big thing. And it also helps you in your games in a weekend. And just understanding that, allowing some stability at the training session. So you've got a relationship with your players that they feel you understand them, and that makes things an awful lot easier. And with how you do it, I'd say it's not a massive change. It's not a revolution. It's just a slight tweak to the way you do things. If you're doing passing exercises, don't make them progressions. Make them options. You can do this or you can do that. or you can do the other. And then you get players taking control of what they're doing. With rondos or other traditional exercises, just add elements where they've got to work together. So if they've got to move that ball into a different area, it really changes the whole dimension of that rondo without losing any of the benefits of it. In fact, increasing the benefits of it. Small-sided games, that's almost a given. Even when I was a lad, we had small-sided games at the very end of a training session. And what I'm suggesting is, like, instead of just playing or being in control of that small-sided game, you set them a problem and allow them to solve it. Now, obviously, they might need some guidance from you at times, but sometimes they mightn't. And that the thing is, you're giving them guidance. You're not telling them, I want this, I want that formation. They are allowed to make up their own tactics and work as a collective to solve that problem that you set them. And it's just a matter of you choosing the problem that you want. It can be, obviously, it's best that if it's something that you're having as an issue at your weekend games, but you just set the problem and allow the players to dictate their own learning, and you'll see massive benefits. So that's my presentation on designing sessions for enjoyment for teenagers. I think you'll find every group of players is rewarding, but teenagers can just be that little bit more rewarding when you can feel that energy from them, because they have loads of energy, and if you can get them enjoying themselves and they're really bursting to be a party session, it can be absolutely fantastically rewarding. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. My name is Sean, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation as well.